bowl with Victor and Terry. So Victor and Terry, don't go too far. So after my talk, there'll be some interesting activity at the stage for about half an hour. Yeah. You guys, your brain's still going? Still all right? I'm quite cooked already, so so much information, and like that's the conference program, and like this is my talk at the end. So you can imagine what kind of dynamic that kind of made in me. Like I sat almost through every talk, and because this talk was so great, and they went like describing the subject, I was deleting my slides one after another because, and then I ended up with an empty slide deck, and I'm like, should we just meditate on an empty slide deck for an hour? Maybe that would be. So actually, I had to recreate a slide deck to I always try to do something new and feel what people want to kind of hear, and I try to frame it. And I'm not afraid to try new things. I'm okay to fail, and as you know me, somebody know me, I try different things. Sometimes they fail. And you probably know about imposter syndrome. Like you're afraid to do stuff because you're afraid like once you're on a stage or you're doing something, doors will open and policemen will come and say, you are not allowed to do what you're doing, you don't have a license for that. We'll take you out of stage, right? Anybody suffers from imposter syndrome? I think we all do, and it's a humble activity, but we also need to counter-fight for it. And I thought to myself, well, these people who would come as policemen to kick you off the stage, what if they also have imposter syndrome? They're afraid that other policemen will come and kick them. So I coined a term yesterday, exposter. And to coin the term, I made a LinkedIn post. I said, I think I've developed a case of exposter syndrome. And it pushes me to experiment, learn fast, and try new things without regrets. And to prove myself, I liked my post. Like, that's how it goes. Yeah. Thank you. It's we all kind of feel that we need to be bolder, because this world, I think, needs people who can say things they believe are right, and that's how we improve this world. So I think I'm an exposter. And being an exposter allowed me to try new different things. Quick curriculum. I started as a software engineer, quickly got hung on XP and Agile. That was like end of 90s, beginning of 2000s. And then I essentially also loved Scrum and became the first Scrum Master in my country, probably, to 2004. I didn't know anybody in Ukraine who was doing Scrum, so I was like, who do I talk to? I need to learn stuff, but I'm the only one. So I started to have meetings and gatherings, and people would come and they will know nothing, so I will have to teach them. Weird. And then I essentially started doing conferences, and I probably did the first Agile conference in Eastern Europe, and Atomic, I think that they left already. He was there like 2008. So I'm weird. I can try new things, and I fail. And I remember when we were planning for this first Agile Eastern Europe conference with my partner, and we invited like Mary Poppendieck, Alistair Cockburn, like everybody. And back in those days, everybody wanted to go to Ukraine because it was like a new spot on the map. And we were discussing, and we were renting this venue. And I said to my partner, hey, I have this apartment. If the conference goes bad, I will have to sell it. And she agreed with that. So that was the deal, essentially, but actually it was a pretty good even business back in the days to run conferences, not like now. And then I wanted to be CSM certified, like everybody at some point, but I didn't want to pay for it. I didn't have money, so I brought CSTs into Ukraine, and I started to, become one. And then I wrote a book on Lego for Scrum, how do you teach Scrum with Lego bricks. Essentially, if you have two good concepts, Lego and Scrum, they put them together, it become something interesting. And then I became a Scrum trainer, never planned to teach. And then I became a LAS trainer. And then I invented org topologies. And then I stopped being a Scrum trainer, like weird. And I don't like talking about myself that much. I'm just trying to prove some point. You guys saw this already today, right? We're trying to go from I shape to T shape to pi shape to whatever, that letter shape, like M with many legs. And I figured the more legs you grow, the easier it is to grow new legs. So like I remember I was still a developer, Scrum Master full-time, like a person mixing these two things, and I was about to start my independent career as an agile coach. Again, I was the first independent agile coach in my country. And I said to myself, well, if it doesn't work, I can always go back and become a developer again. So the more legs you have, the easier it is to stay resilient. So this is about like personal resilience. M shaping, I think, helps here. And the more legs we grew, the easier it is. Maybe you can attribute my hyperactivity to this one. You guys know this? ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Maybe that's that one. If it's that one, you should have one too. It's pretty cool. You'll learn many new things. So yeah, here I am doing this talk on this subject, and I wanted to be here. It's my second trip to Singapore to this conference, second time. Was here last year. And I said to myself, I don't know much about business resilience, so let me do a talk on business resilience. That's how ex-posters act, because that helps you to learn stuff. And I think I've learned some stuff by preparing. Hopefully, you'll find that useful too. Right? I don't know much about resilience, and I still do this talk. But then I start coaching myself, and GPT helped here too. And then I realized I know a guy who knows a company who knows a lot about staying resilient. And it is this company I'd like to introduce you. It's called Poster. Nothing to do with imposter, just Poster, because they do POS, point of sale automation. This country is in Ukraine, and this is the photos. It says in Ukrainian, 9 years of simplifying business management, and this is the CEO of a company. And they are celebrating their success, and because they're pretty successful product R&D. If you ever go to Ukraine after we win this bloody war, you go to a restaurant, and these are high chances, like all this software in those restaurants, in any restaurant, is run by these guys. So they're small, but super effective, I can say. And as you can see, it's very intimate, this meeting. They have candle lights. That's because it's half a year after the full-fledged Russian invasion, and there's no electricity in the city they are in. The city is called Dnipro. It's somewhere on the east-south of Ukraine, and they don't have light, and they still doing all right. So pretty resilient company, like if you think of that. And this company is called Poster, and I guess I'm also ex-Poster because I work there with them. I'm a double ex-Poster, okay? I just, trying to get you going because like you guys are tired, and it's a stand-up comedy in a way about business resilience, right? I wrote a case study, and as we talk, it's been published by Basvori on the LESS website, and it says, thank you so much. It's a lot of words, a lot of work, and Victor Gergic was my reviewer. Thank you for that, Victor. So less adoption and Poster in times of COVID and war. And this guy's in a restaurant business. We had like 4 lockdowns in Ukraine, a restaurant's down, a business is down, and then the war. Interesting fact, and a sad fact, by the start of the war, half of the client base was in Russia. So they serve Ukrainian and Russian restaurants. So what they did within the 2 days after the war started, they blocked all the Russian clients, and instead of features of the product, show a video educating Russians about the war. Of course, after that, you don't have clients anymore. That was the plan. So essentially, they cut the client base twice. And nevertheless, over the year, they went back to be profitable again. So like, if you think of any better case of resilience, COVID and then war, Yeah, so before the case was published at the LS, because I'm ex-poster, I published it myself on my website, and it's been there for several years now, but now it's official, and Bas is hitting the publish button. Yeah, so building business resilience in changing times, and we live in very changing times, so we can say to us, well, maybe because we didn't live in other times. I think every generation tells themselves. And I did some digging, and I found a company which might not be the most lovable company in this part of the world, Dutch East Indian Campaign. Touchy subject, right? But VOC, this company existed for almost 200 years. And it's a sign of resilience, you can say, to exist. And if you think these times were stable and there was like no challenge, no, there was not the case. And I found this interesting historical case about this guy, Jan Pieterszoon Koen. I hope I'm pronouncing his Dutch name correctly. Essentially, he was in charge of some island. You guys know him? I think he was a bad motherfucker eventually, but like in terms of history and resilience, very interesting. He was in charge of some island somewhere in Indonesia, and was the only island which grew nutmeg to export. And there were some problems on his island, and he couldn't wait for head office to reply to his email what to do, because there were no emails back in those days. And if he would have sent an inquiry, does this island didn't want to, do what I say, it will take maybe up to 6 months to get a response from the Dutch head office, if any response. So he didn't wait, and he just acted as actually he was told. He has the right to act when stuff happens, and he actually secured that island and save the business. And like part of the resilience of this company, it's these things. It was the first joint stock company with freely tradable stocks back in the days, so they have lots of cash. Cash is also a source of resilience, you can say, right? And then they were backed by the government, so they didn't have competitors. It's also good for resilience, by the way, if you can outcompete everybody else. And decentralized governance. In this case, this guy had the right to exercise his power in a remote island. You can design for resilience. And I think this is what this conference is about. It's not how to magically raise money to stay resilient. It's like how you systemically do it, right? And I'm sure you saw this star diagram of Galbraith today like 75 times, but nevertheless, this is like symbol of org design, and the star model is a symbol of consistent org design. I think we can learn to intentionally design for resilience, right? And hence this talk. And I'm not done yet, it's just the beginning. Am I still in the bounds of the camera? Like, it's hard for me to stay in the bounds. I'm an ex-poster. I'm out of bounds. So it's a last talk, right? You need to get something out. Like, you need to get some big idea. You can print it and put it in a frame, something you would remember from this conference. You have many talks. So let me give you one picture, which is an org design system that helps gain business resilience. And you might want to get your photos and make a picture, because they have lots of words, and I don't have time to show it a lot. So, you guys ready? Right. Essentially, if you like study that, you don't find any better org design system for resilience. Interestingly, business resilience, I think, is not a deterministic thing. You cannot really promise somebody that with doing this, you will be resilient. But you can design for being more adaptive. That's a deterministic organizational optimizing goal, and adaptivity brings resilience. Like in the case with this poster company, they didn't plan like to be resilient. They just had problem allocating teams and switching teams to stay working on most valuable stuff. So they came to less because they want more adaptability, but eventually they also got resilience as a positive side effect. You got the picture, right? I can move to the next slide. Okay, so what essentially they did, they moved from a bunch of component teams, and I think there were lots of talks today. I'm not going to go in details. Lots of different component teams with per team lists, per team owners, per team leads, which creates a very fragmented organization, into a team setup with one product owner. CEO was playing the role of product owner in this case, and a one product backlog and 6 teams, feature teams, learning to work globally. So nothing really surprising here. And actually, I was not going to write my case study because I said to myself, like, why would I write it? I just help them do less by the book. There's nothing to read in my case study, but then Victor convinced me that there are some interesting aspects in this case study. But essentially, they just follow what Bas and Craig have been teaching us about. This is the org topologies map, which just visually explain what actually was happening. And today, we have a talk from Louis, right? And he was explaining how he can help teams go from local to global. So these teams went from skills being super local, locally optimizing skills, to globally to feature teams. And they went also from local scope ownership on components to owning the same product. So essentially they were there. And in org topologies, we are looking at these different org design systems at LESS and FAST and others, and we're trying to unpack them to understand what are these good, interesting practices that you can advise companies to do. And we call this elevating katas because we help companies elevate, right? And kata means some kind of exercise, like in martial arts you can do. So these are elevating katas. You can say this company tried, educated everybody in systems thinking, extract team leads from team, extract product owners from teams, remove team-level backlogs, form outcome-oriented backlog, transition to feature teams, move to shared code, move to shared cadence, and held all the events that Les recommends you to do. So essentially, they just did this, okay? And the result is immense resilience. You probably would ask me, Alexei, we all know less. Like, what's your point now? You should give us something bigger because it's the last talk of a conference. And I'm like, okay. Okay, let's try to give you something more interesting, more specific. One big message, I think, is you should never start showing this picture to other people. Right? Some people might not agree. I'm happy with disagreements, but my opinion is that once you show this picture to your clients, you start having this superficial framework comparison discussion. So don't do it. You need to understand it, but then you need to do something else. And I believe you need to understand org dynamics and helps others understand org dynamics. And the better you do it, the more there is chances, there will be some change going. So in the remaining time, I have like 40 minutes, I'd like to explain you some interesting org dynamics that I think you might know, or you will actually understand them intuitively. But they might be interesting things that you can start discussion with in your organizations to get change going. So instead of showing less picture, engage in some discussion about what's really happening in the organization. And the way I will approach it is to try to understand what business resilience is not. There were lots of talks today about what it is. Let me try to understand what it is not. So it is not, actually it's not living, it's living with bad blocking asynchronous dependencies. We all know these pictures from friends and internet, right? In SAFe, you do this board dependency boards, they call them, right? And you see that these are teams, these are work items, and you see all these dependencies between the teams. I'm not going to mention the details about that one, but like we all understand that dependencies that make teams wait for each other and will make your lead times grow is not helping you to gain business resilience. So what do we do in LeSS with them? If you ask Buzz Vody, and I heard several people ask him, like, how do you manage dependencies in LeSS? His answer is, there are no dependencies in LeSS. Wow. Do you really believe this statement? No. Well, you should believe the statement, actually, because structurally we are removing these dependencies. Well, what do? We turn dependencies into shared work, right? If some people need to do something and they are in different teams, this work is kind of triggering this pain, this suffering, this dependency, this waiting, and everything that follows. If you put these people together and give them the same work, dependency is kind of there, but it's not painful anymore. It becomes work they can share and do. So by switching to cross-component, cross-functional teams, you actually structurally removing dependencies, and this is already a very strong move to get to better adaptability and as a result to resilience. Probably you know that, so I will continue. This one is interesting. Fixating your teams on current known roadmaps and optimizing for local efficiency. There was an open space today about why we're so sometimes emotional about team topologies. So this is something that I've observed happening in some team topologies inspired implementation. So what typically I observe is the following. Somebody comes up with a roadmap. Product managers is the job. And of course, there's an IT organization that needs to implement on this roadmap. So what do? You kind of process this roadmap. Well, because it's big and complex, typically the fast thinking is that we need to break it down into pieces. And if we have these pieces, then we can give each piece to each of the teams, right? And in team topologies, they call them stream-aligned teams, I think, and in other frameworks, they call them differently. But the idea is that these teams are owning different parts of the roadmap. Now, what is happening here, interestingly, is that these teams might believe, if you go to this team and you ask, are you working on the most important stuff? Because they see only local world, they see only their priority. They'll probably say, yes, we're working on priorities given to us by our team's product owner, right? Well, that might not be true. So you can do an experiment, right? You can convince all the product owners to print all the backlogs and then schedule a meeting with the CEO. And when this happens, you bring all these printed items from all the backlogs to your CEO, you put them on the floor, right? And you ask your CEO to actually sort them out in a priority order, what's important for her. Well, first of all, this is very unlikely this is going to happen, because like, why would these product owners want to go to the CEO and ask for priorities? It's their job to do it. So you will have hard times convincing them. Secondly, even if you print and you take it to your CEO, she might not even understand those items, because they might not even be outcome or business-related item. There may be some kind of internal stuff she will not understand. But let's assume you were able to get your CEO look at this item and sort them. What is the likelihood in this universe that top of each of these three backlogs, top three items, end up as top three items on the global CEO list? I think the probability is like very low. Essentially, and I worked in organizations which follow this operating model. I work in a German social network. By this time, they had maybe like 28, 26 teams, and every team would have its own backlog, its own product owner, its own set of priorities. So what would happen in this company is that you would go once in a while, I think once a month it was back in the days, to a all-hands meeting. And there, somebody like a CPO will show you a list of OKRs. And the top OKR would be improve retention of premium users. And you're like, yeah, damn, that's important because we need cash, we need premium users to stay. And then you go back to your team as a team member, and you look into your backlog, and there's nothing to do with premium members because you're building an iOS app for messaging. What do? Will you like boycott this backlog and go to another team? No, you'll just go to your next sprint planning meeting done locally, and you will pull an item that probably from a global perspective is not important at all. So this organization, and this is like one of the criticism of stream aligning, is that it creates this dynamics of fixating teams and actually focusing on local efficiency. Let's imagine actually the CEO understood the items. Let's imagine this team understood actually they're working on something not important globally. What are the chances that they will go and help other teams? First of all, somebody might say, hey, it's not efficient because they actually never work with other code bases. Those other code bases might be written in other languages. So the argument would be it's not efficient to go and slowly learn that stuff. Another argument would be they look at the product owner and product owner says, no, I'm not going to let you go because without you guys, what am I doing? Okay, so this is not helping with resilience, with adaptivity. We understand that, and eventually over time you get these fences going in between teams, which preventing them from helping each other working on something that is important. Interestingly enough, like if you go to Google, I don't know if you actually go to Google these days, but if you go to Google still and you put cat on top, then you can play with cat paws. Anybody saw this feature in Google? You should try it. It's pretty cool. I play with my kids. You put cat, and then you can dynamically stamp. And I found this tweet by a guy. He says, Google let me off today. If you know any open positions for project managers or seniors of engineers, especially with a relevant experience, let me know. I was the PM of the charge of the cat paw button. This is a joke, of course, right? But like, I mean, if you're stuck in here, it's not just the business resilience suffers. You are not learning much. If this is a cat paw feature, a cat paw team supporting the cat paw feature, you are not learning much. You are not M-shaping. Probably you will be having hard times, and then the threat is this AI is going to replace us. Well, your AI probably is going to replace some of us eventually. So it's our responsibility to break that silo and actually learn. And if your company doesn't allow you to learn, probably you need to change the company. Because I think this is our personal responsibility to stay resilient and get out of this loop. What do we do with less in here? Well, in less, teams are focusing on the whole product, right? So there will be no team that is permanently working on search or cat paw. Temporarily, one team can pull up an item which is like improving retention of premium members and focus on that. So have a whole product focus doesn't mean you are not having a good focus. You can have still a focus for a couple of sprints to actually reach some business outcome. But then once this outcome is reached, you go back. You step out, you look globally, and you work on stuff that is on top of the global backlog. Essentially, that's the dynamics we want to recreate in LAS. So far, I've listed some of the things that make business resilience harder. Anybody remembers the first one? Was something with dependencies, right? Second one? You guys need to put more attention to me talk. Fixating teams is not helping. Number 3. I didn't talk about number 3 yet. So. You guys are not paying attention at all. Should I stop now? I don't know. So blocking yourself from experimenting and learning easily. That is something it's not helping you. Imagine you have this setup with the teams who understand each team has permanent focus, right? And now CEO wakes up at night with a cool idea. Let's do blah. Like new customer segment, new country, new feature, can be anything. In the end, it's their job maybe to come up with these ideas. They will these days call them hypotheses, experiments, but yeah. So what needs to happen in this organization for it to take on this hypothesis or experiment and to do? Well, you can say, in theory, any team can just pull this item and work on it. But in reality, if you go to companies who are structured like this, every product owner will try to push it away, because every product owner already has a full local backlog and priorities, and they spend some days on the offsite with the team prioritizing and strategizing, so they will try to push it away. Right? So it will be kind of hard to test that new product hypothesis. Right? So what is typically happening in the companies to try new things? What do they need to do to take on this new work that was not planned? Different things can happen. They might also create a new team for that. And that's how actually companies grow over time. And by the way, this was just an experiment, right? Nobody said this feature is a great idea. It's a hypothesis. It's somebody's bad idea. So once they have this team to do this, and this experiment turns out to be a bad experiment, how hard will it be for them to shut down the team? Also hard. So this actually is not helping with the resilience. What do we do in LeSS with that? It's a wonderful framework. You need to actually Google that. It has answers to like a lot of things. So what needs to happen in this setup when a CEO or a product owner has a new idea? Done. The next PBR teams will look at this, start talking about that, and then in next sprint planning, some team might volunteer to try that, right? So no reorganization is actually required. Anybody met Craig Larman in life? So I've been to like 5 CLPs of Craig. I think I'm on a record. I never have enough of LeSS and CLP classes. So I think after my 3rd CLP, I came to Craig at the break, and he always sits like this, like zero thoughts in his mind. So you don't really want to interrupt, but you're not interrupting because nothing is happening there. You're like meditating. So I'm like, Craig, what is resilience? And I would like you to appreciate that. There was like 4 or 5 years ago, before resilience became a topic of conferences. So I asked him, what is resilience? And if you met Craig and you ask him questions, anybody ask him questions, he replies, and your first reaction that he didn't understand your question. Actually, but it is you who don't understand his answer. He understood your question and he gave you the answer, which will be enough for you to think for the next 5 years. Seriously. So he gave me an answer, and only preparing for this talk like today, it hit me. He said, you know, Alexei, resilience is about having enough cash, says Craig in his typical. And I thought he didn't understand me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I. Anyway, talking about cash. Just allows me to talk about cash now. You guys know about this law of diminishing returns. Some people been to my class the other day, so it's like kind of repetitive for them, but I think it's good to remember things. So in economy, there's a law of diminishing returns, essentially saying that doing more of the same eventually will stop paying off. Yeah, and we all understand that if you refactor, if you put inputs into refactoring something, at some point, you should stop that because it's already good enough. And bug fixing and new features it all follow the same, like a law, right? So at some point, it just doesn't make sense to do that stuff, what you're doing anymore. You need to do something else. Go back to our picture. So what is not helping business resilience is pretending economical health doesn't matter. And by the way, IT organizations typically completely separated from budgeting and financial things. They just live in their own vacuum. So what happens here is that we have these three teams, and because every team is fixated on a stream, search features, payment features, paid members features, whatever, eventually doing more of search will not make sense, but they will still do this, right? You understand this dynamics. Unless you do something with them, unless you reorganize. But if you keep them doing search, they will be just improving search for no reason. So what is happening in this picture, in this organization, is that like if you keep them fixed forever, the value they are delivering is diminishing. Do you agree with this proposition? Right, it's like a simplified thing that happens, but like, yeah, and then remember, from time to time you're adding new teams to deal with stuff which was not initially in your backlog. So what does it do to costs? And if you divide, will you invest in such company? Right? So it's about money, it's about thinking strategically, and this is a very comfortable work designed to live in this team. I remember I was working in this social network and I had a mobile team, and it was fantastic life for the developers because your product owner just sits in your room, always available. You don't need to talk to customers. You just continuously improve your iOS app. Fantastic. But like globally, I don't think it makes sense. So this company now, I think, has some problems eventually. So let me show an org design system. And in less, you can continuously improve and refine and potentially make teams work on the highest value all the time, or hypothetically highest value, right? You never know essentially what's high, what's low, but you can. A bit of a change of subject, and I have like 20 minutes before this fishbowl exercise we're gonna have here with two fish. And this photo to remind me that I was already at this conference in 2024. That's the batch of 2024. Guess what? I have it here now. Anybody wants to check? That's the last Singapore 2024 conference batch. Why do I have it with me? It's a very resilient batch. Seriously, it's the best batch I've ever had in conferences. This year not, last year perfect. It's plastic. Guess what? I carry it with me to other conferences. I would like somebody to appreciate that fact. Organizers, you paid attention? Yes, this is a fantastic badge. It has actually two holes, so it doesn't flip. Some people never get it. Last conference in Amsterdam always has a badge with one hole. We need to do a CLD on that. Cost cutting. Okay. Yes, of course. I cannot crack a joke on that one, just in time. So last year I spoke at this conference about something I called the last transformation. And I dig up some numbers about what they call agile industrial complex. There's this term, like how much money organizations worldwide burn on agile transformation. Essentially, how much money McKinsey is making worldwide. And in 2024, it was like $31 billion was estimated to be spent in all this agile transformation stuff. And I thought to myself, wow, imagine they actually use this money to improve the products. Whoa, we're gonna live in a different world. But like they use it for org change. And then I showed this slide the other day in my class, and somebody asked, was this money well spent? And I don't know, but like we can say we hope it is well spent. But we also know that maybe that transformation they did not work. And typically what I see happening, and I will draw very briefly here, what I typically see happening, again, it's a simplified dynamics, but I'm just giving you some dynamics so you can start having discussions with your orgs. So imagine the first day you took the roadmap and you grind it and you realign the teams with this roadmap. Every stream is perfectly stream aligned. And actually maybe on that day, all the teams are really working on the most important items. But over time, the law of diminishing return and new items and change of roadmap will essentially, you see the line? Like this is time, this is performance. The performance of the organization is like how much value they produce with the money they got will decrease. In this moment, managers will try to do some things, like maybe reshuffle team members or do something, but eventually somebody big will say, hey guys, we've been doing this reshuffling for like 6 months. I think our teams are not streamlined anymore. What do they do in this case? They do a rework. McKinsey sliced $27 billion, bam, they back to square one again. Now the teams are perfectly aligned. Now, 9 months later, so we saw this many organizations. The cycle will really depend. But I have a company in Germany, like every 3 years, I get a call from them. Guess what? They are reorganizing. I'm like, yeah, cool. Let me schedule one in the next 3 years. I'm gonna wait for that one. So it happens over and over again. So. Was this money well spent? Well, not really if that transformation was not lasting. If you need to do it over and over again, it's only McKinsey's who actually benefit from this. And this phenomena we call 1x organization. You know what is a 1x improvement? Like no improvement. Because like in average, because they're not going outside of the paradigm, they're still working in the same paradigm, they're just realigning teams, but in the same thinking mentality that you need to cut big stuff into small stuff and give the small stuff to teams. And so we're currently writing a book with orthopology people, Roland Flam, my partner and co-creator of Orthopologist, and Craig Larman joined us last year, and the book is called 10x Org. Hopefully this book is done by the end of this year and you'll be able to enjoy it. It has lots of less ideas, but we're also trying to think broadly and not to scare people with the less picture, but really get this discussion going. How do we break down this systemic dynamics that we observe? Let me show you framework. You know, like in a poster, in my case that I just explained to you, they didn't have to do another transformation after they flipped to less. They could just innovate with the teams they got. Eventually, like 4 years later, I'm talking to CEO. They've changed something more significantly, but it was not a reorg. It was like more like of summary of continuous improvements they were doing. So if you use this idea, your last transformation can be really lasting transformation. So let me summarize. You guys remember the first one? Something about dependencies, right? Oh no. Dependencies, and then fixation, and then learning, and then Even I don't remember because it's a fresh slide deck, but you guys pay attention, right? Economical health and learning. Probably there are more things, and you can pick which ones are applicable in your organization to get this discussion going without showing the framework, but rather talking about important stuff. And on the positive side, that what I believe LESS offers as a org design system for systemic change. I got exactly 10 minutes, so this is fantastic. So imagine you do all of this. You bring this to your companies and you have a conversation, and what do you think happens? Orgs will still resist to change. We had a talk about resistance, and how did you frame it? Inertia, right? Yeah, so this is going to be there. Anyway, the reasons, just not knowing how you else can work, because team topologies is everywhere, on every shelf of every manager now. Fear of change, because change can, and I guess playing it safe. Right? Craig Larman is not really here in this conference. He's not going to be in Amsterdam, and I think it's time we appreciate the learning he gave to us, and we try to reiterate it and amplify it. So I remembered one specific learning that I was a part of. So this is you, and this is your organization. Right? You come and you eventually would like to have them do this. And your organization, you have a Bob. Anybody knows Bob from Craig Larman's classes? Sometimes he calls him Igor, depending on which country he was teaching, but Bob. And Bob is this kind of a guy. He's a manager, and he's really pragmatic. And he does might change if it helps him, but he would question everything because he's responsible, and you're just a consultant or somebody, right? So this thing. What are the arguments in your world that Bobs would typically say when you try to sell them, explain them all these benefits this brings? What are the typical arguments? We don't have time for this, for change. What else to say?
We've always done this the old way. Why change?
We always done this, and by the way, he's true because he actually got promoted to become a Bob, senior Bob, because he was doing what he was doing. So this is this feedback loop, right? So we've done this, why change?
We are so special.
Oh, we're so special. Well, every company is special, right? So he's right. Actually, he's right in all the points. My Bobs, and I work with all the large banks in Ukraine, and I saw other companies all around the world. To generalize this, I think my Bobs these days say this: cognitive load will hit teams hard. It's a big topic now. Code quality will go down if we allow teams to open up different code bases. You cannot know everything. So how can you be in a feature team that pulls an item? Operational excellence cannot be guaranteed, meaning if the service is down, but everybody owns it, who do I call at night, to reboot the server? And you guys hear that? Is it a part of your world? Yeah? Do you know the Bob I'm talking about? And Craig gave this algorithm, right? So you should not see Bob as your enemy. That's the first mistake. So do not denigrate. Do not say, oh, Bob, you need to go to a LESS training. I've been to 5 trainings and you did not. No, that's the worst thing you should do, right? So you should coach yourself. Bob is right in his own way of being right. Everybody's partially right, okay? Second thing you do, you appreciate Bob's concern. Thank you, Bob, for actually thinking that if we do it without putting enough planning into that, probably some things will really can be broken, right? If you really open up all these repositories and people just do whatever they want, of course, things will happen. So thank you, Bob, for actually thinking about that and bringing this concern act. Now, provided you have kind of agreement in your company what you're actually optimizing for, you need to remind of this goal. And in Craig's example, there's a CEO sent everybody in the company an email. People, we are going to build an adaptive organization. And this idealistic world, of course, you can say, Bob, just to remind you about the email we got recently from our CEO, adaptability or resilience is something we need to optimize for. I think in real world, this has not happened. CEOs don't send these emails with optimizing goals. But I guess you can argue with Bob that there's nothing more important than staying in business and staying relevant to the customer as stakeholders. So this is the primary optimizing goal. And then, instead of going into, do we do resilience or do we do this, you engage in a slow thinking discussion to generate options. So the question is, how can we get more resilient and not sub-optimize the stuff you care about? You doing like and, not or, okay? So I have 5 minutes before my final slide with thank yous. I want you guys to try that. Okay, I want you guys to form and turn your chairs and form small circles for 5 minutes. Please do. I flew 12,000 kilometers for you. Please move your chairs around, you know? I did it twice. So just a quick exercise. Quick exercise. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles, 4 circles. Okay, you guys are cognitive load guys. Your argument is number 1. You're number 2, you're number 3, you're number 4, and you can pick any one you want. So I'm asking you, provided that resilience is the top priority of the company, is this first optimizing goal, primary optimizing goal, how can you not sub-optimize, for example, cognitive load? So the question is really, if we're going for less and adaptability and resilience, what we can do to help developers not to have their heads explode. And you guys work on quality, you guys work on knowing everything, and you guys work on being able to find somebody to restore a service. Right? And you guys can just pick one. 5 minutes, have a discussion, brainstorm options. The more the better. What can we do to help Bob? All right, thank you. Really cutting you short. Anybody wants to share some interesting idea? How about the cognitive load? So how can we help developers not to have their heads explode and still explore this world of feature teams and open code bases? Joel, you want to?
So good test automation, good onboarding documentation, having things well documented, cleaned up, yeah.
And many other things.
Many other things, yeah.
Right, and so actually we know all these practices from before, right? This is not something you just invented now. They're all the things you as a software engineer, craftsman, have been doing before. My battery is drying out. Hello. Yes. I think this one needs to. Hello? Oh, okay, it works. Yes, so, and I guess code quality, we know from 90s, from Kent Beck, and we know how to support quality, right? So it's not either or. It's not less versus Bob's, right? It's not this versus that. It's like this and that. And this is a fantastic world of exploring different options. Victor, just somebody was here preparing for a fishbowl, and Jürgen de Smet, they just written a book, like 40 different ways how you can manage cognitive load without just cutting teams into streams. Yes, Victor? the cognitive load book has like dozens of ideas how you can actually do this within less adoption and stuff. So you don't need to go back to this old org design that we have. Make a picture of this algorithm if you want to try it with your blobs. I think it can help to get your change going. On a final note, there's this wonderful blog post by Baswadi from 2020, and he listed these 7 org design principles, which are like less friendly, but the goal is to simplify organization, not to reach adaptability. And from specialist roles to teams, from project to products, from resource thinking, people thinking, etc. I think this gives us a direction, a northern star, right? If we're going into this direction of, it's hard to know if your org will be more resilient over time because you need a war to test it. Like it's hard. It's expensive too. So, but like I think one metric Buzz tells us is if your org gets simplified over time, probably that's the right direction. So my personal metric for my client engagement is after I leave, is the org a little bit simpler than it was before? And it's actually obvious. So we have this wonderful, how you call them? Things, stickers lying around. We want more, we don't want more process layers, we want less stuff. So I would like to leave you with this wonderful idea of simplified organizations and hopefully helping them to stay resilient in the times of change. Thank you very much, guys.
What's the name of the other person besides Bob and
Igor. They are brothers. They are actually in my family. Bob and Igor are brothers. It's funny. No, they are the same people. It just when Craig teaches in Russian-speaking countries, he would assume it's Bob.
Some lady name, right?
I don't know.